really good shape. Oh my God.
So airspace, VFR weather minimums, controlled airspace, uncontrolled airspace, those are real things. And I remember we were talking non-towered and towered fields, controlled airspace and uncontrolled airspace, this really does exist. Class golf airspace, that's your only uncontrolled airspace, it's only class golf, okay? Just the rules changed a little bit. You can kind of do whatever you want to do there. As long as you don't crash into anybody and it's all on your own. There's no IFR traffic in there that is under air traffic control. So that nobody is there with a clearance, all right? Transponder, class Echo airspace, Federal Airways and Victor Airways, like we mentioned, the very last question we were talking about, what were those Victor Airways on the chart? That's how IFR traffic flows sometimes. Because we have RNAV and most pilots are able to use the GPS receivers to navigate, we're not using those Victor Airways as often as we did in the past. So we should be kind of restricted to those. They still clear us in instrument flight plans to go along the Victor Airways at times, but nothing that I need to concern myself for as a VFR pilot. We'll talk about it in the type of airspace it consists of. Class Delta Charlie Bravo, VFR flyway planning chart, Alpha airspace, special VFR clearance, special use airspace alert area. Bunch of different military and restricted operations, all this special use airspace, right? Warning, restricted, prohibited, controlled firing areas, other airspace. National security areas, military training routes, parachute jumps, we did those. Terminal radar service area, temporary flight restrictions, the ADIZ, the Air Defense Identification Zone, National Defense Airspace, Washington, D.C. Special Flight Rules Airspace, or Special Flight Rules Area, flight restricted zone and intercept procedures. What happens as we go through and if it becomes an intercept, how do we not make it any worse than it already is? Okay. So here are the airport traffic service airspace information. You see this on the charts, on the sectional chart. Class Bravo airspace outlined by blue. Class Charlie airspace outlined by magenta. Solid lines, okay? A dashed blue line is Class Delta airspace. A dashed magenta line is Class Echo airspace. Class Golf that we see here in the transition zones will tell me that this area has 700-foot Class Golf. On the outside of that circle, I got Class Golf that starts at 1,200 feet, right, above ground level. Class Echo space with a floor 1,200 or greater above the surface. And then if I were to have any airspace, and we have some of this on that Miami sectional chart. You guys can see out here, kind of north of Key West, you've got that line that will show you. This is where Class Echo airspace starts. All right. And a couple of different examples of some special use airspace here. Okay. The very first airspace that we talk about in this section is Class Golf. That's your only uncontrolled airspace. Okay? It's typically very, very close to the ground. It could go all the way up to 14,500 feet. Some areas it will, but very few areas. This is mountainous terrain with not a lot of radar service, and they don't have control over this. It's on the interior of the United States. Who cares if somebody goes through there? They can fly however they want to, VFR, IFR. There's no way for that part of the airspace to be controlled. So it's depicted as uncontrolled airspace, Class Golf airspace. Most of the airspace, and if you look all across Florida, there's just like this, no depiction at all. That means Class Golf airspace is below 1,200 feet. When you get to one of these areas and there's a magenta circle all the way around it, we have plenty of them all across our chart, that means that Class Golf airspace only goes up to 700 feet. If you're operating an airplane or any kind of aircraft above 700 feet in that area, you're in Class Echo airspace, okay? And that is controlled airspace. The only one that's not controlled is Class Golf, right? VFR, this is finally when we get an opportunity to discuss VFR and what these visual flight rules mean. Class Golf airspace, and this one is the most confusing out of all of them. Ah, you're welcome. Class Golf airspace, 1,200 feet AGL and below. If it's daytime, 1 statute mile. Visibility, 3 statute miles at night. So for me to maintain VFR, visual flight rules, I need to have at least 1 statute mile flight visibility. I can tell you that if you only have 1 statute mile flight visibility, you will probably not be very, very comfortable about flying that airplane. That is not a lot of flight visibility. Okay? If it's below 10,000 feet, I got day 1 statute mile and night 3 statute miles. And above 10,000 feet, the rules change. What changes with the rules at 10,000 feet? A couple of things. You guys remember what happens to the speed? The speed limit? What is it? 250. Yeah, 250. So below 10,000 feet, civil aircraft are limited to 250 knots. Above 10,000 feet, you can fly a lot faster. Whatever the certified flight is, or MMO, or maximum operating speed is for that airplane. Again, for this Class Golf airspace, the minimum distance that I have from the clouds during the daytime and below 1,200 feet, just stay clear of the cloud. Just stay out of it. That's it. I have no minimum distance away from the cloud. If it's nighttime, then I have 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2,000 feet horizontal. This is kind of common. This is what we use for the most part, your standard separation from the cloud. If it's below 10,000 feet and above 1,200, again, 500 feet below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. Above 10,000 feet, 1,000 below, 1,000 above, and 1 statute mile away from the cloud. Okay? Minimum pilot qualifications to fly in Class Golf. Student pilot. Student pilot, you can fly in Class Golf. VFR entry, I don't need any requirements. I don't have to talk to anybody. It's all Class Golf's non-controlled. ATC services. If there are radar services available, ATC can work you. Okay, ATC can provide you information here. But guess what? Workload permitting. Number 1, you have to request it specifically. And number 2, that person has to have enough time with what else they're doing right there to help you. Okay, you are not the priority. Okay, so what do? Maintain VFR. What does that mean to me? Make sure you look outside. Yeah. See and avoid. Okay. All right. Transponder with mode C, now mode S capabilities after 2020, after January 2020, which just happened not too long ago, is required in airspace above the dashed line. So here I got a mountain. That mountain exceeds 10,000 feet. If I'm below 2,500 feet AGL, I don't need a transponder. Not at all. Okay. Is it anywhere over there listed on my required equipment? Nope. Don't need it. But if I fly above 2,500 feet, yes, I need it. If I fly above 10,000 feet MSL, yes, I need it. If I fly above or inside Class Charlie airspace, I need it. I can fly below Class Charlie airspace and I don't need it there, right? If I fly anywhere within 30 nautical miles of Class Bravo airspace, all the way to the surface, I need a transponder. Okay? Look around Miami. You guys see that solid line all the way in Miami that says Mode C, 30 nautical miles? That tells me that I have to have a mode C, now that it's 2020, I have to have a mode S transponder. Anywhere inside that circle all the way to the ground. Okay?
So these are 30 miles. These are 30 miles around Miami.
Miami, Tampa, Orlando, anywhere with Class Bravo airspace. Now coming back here, how do I know that is Class Bravo airspace? Look at the lines around Miami, those solid blue lines. That tells me that's Class Bravo. And it also tells me it's Class Bravo because I have that line all the way around it for 30 nautical miles. They call that the Mode C veil, like a wedding veil that goes in front of the bride's face. Well, this is your Mode C veil. Pretty soon it'll be called a Mode S veil when they change all of the charts. That just changed in January. This is an example of a transponder. That's fine. And we have some transponder codes, some common transponder codes. There we go. Okay, Victor Airway. We talked Victor Airway just for a moment. You guys, find that one that has a V next to it. From one point to another, I have a total mileage here underneath there, 69 miles. How important is that to me as a VFR pilot? Not one bit at all. That's what I call nice to know information. As an instrument pilot, you'll have to know that. They're just setting the stage for me to learn that as an instrument pilot, okay? It is exactly 8 nautical miles wide, so 4 nautical miles on either side of the center line. And it is Class Echo airspace from 1,200 feet AGL all the way to the top of Class Echo airspace, which is below 18,000 feet. So 17,999. Okay. The soft edge of the magenta line, we're talking these Class Echo airspaces. Find air glades. You see air, or even TNT. If you're on that side, you can find TNT or any of these things. Any of these airports that have a magenta shaded area all the way around. That soft edge of the magenta land, or the magenta band, tells me that Class Echo airspace, controlled airspace, begins at 700 feet above ground level. On the outside of this, Class Echo airspace begins at 1,200 feet above ground level, right? The hard edge of the magenta band, Class Echo airspace, 1,200 feet, okay? Some of these airports are going to have a magenta line all the way around it. If you look at if you look at TNT, which is right there in the middle, what kind of circle do I have all the way around? Dade Collier. What color? Magenta. So that Dade Collier Airport has a magenta line all the way around it. That means Class Echo airspace goes to the surface. It begins right there at the surface. As soon as you take off from Dade Collier, you're in controlled airspace. There is no uncontrolled airspace above Dade Collier. Now, do I need to talk to anybody? No, not really. But the rules change just a little bit. Let's talk about that. See here, VFR entry and require instrument. Do I need to talk to anybody? No. Who can go in there? Student pilot. All right, that's fine. But can I fly here with 1 statute mile visibility during the day? No. Class Echo airspace, if I'm below 10,000 feet, 3 statute mile visibility, 500 below a cloud, 1,000 feet above a cloud, 2,000 feet horizontal from a cloud. Something magic happens at 10,000 feet. Number 1, I need a Mode S transponder. Okay. Number 2, speed limits change. So now I need 5 statute mile visibility. And I need 1,000 below, 1,000 above, and 1 statute mile horizontal from a cloud. ATC services, IFR and IFR separation. So if there's an IFR pilot and another IFR pilot, guess what? ATC will separate these two airplanes. That is guaranteed. Are you going to fly IFR at all as a student pilot? 100% no. Are you going to fly as a private pilot IFR? Well, not until you earn your instrument rating, so we've got some time before that happens. Do you have any ATC services then in Class Echo airspace? I'm going to say the answer is no. Now, I can request it, but look, what is it on? Workload permitting basis. Does that mean that I will 100% have their attention all the time? No. Okay? Use your eyes. All right. Class Alpha airspace. Class Alpha airspace or positive control airspace. This happens at flight level 180 and it goes all the way to flight level 600. Class Echo airspace, the one we just now talked about, is everything from 14,500 all the way up until forever. Except that one little slice of Class Alpha in the flight levels between 180 and 600. That's all Class Alpha airspace. So above it, Echo. Below it is Echo. Down to 14,500. Guaranteed at 14,500. Now, does that mean the Echo only starts at 14,500? No. Come on. We just talked about this. And that is, here it's all 1,200. Here it's all 700. And here it goes down to the surface. So all across Florida, what do we have? Class Echo airspace. It starts at 1,200 feet. If you look just north of Key West, here I got some areas where certainly we do have a few areas where Class Echo airspace starts a little bit higher than 1,200 feet. Not much, just a little bit higher. Okay, Delta. Take a look, please, at Miami Executive Airport, Tamiami. What class airspace is around Tamiami? Not Miami, but Tamiami, Miami Executive. Those dashes should be a different color. They're blue dash lines, right? That's Class Delta airspace. Fort Lauderdale Executive, look at that one. What class airspace is Fort Lauderdale Executive? Delta, okay? So look, minimum VFR visibility, 3 statute miles. Distance from the cloud, 512. Minimum pilot qualification, student pilot. Aha, I finally have some entry requirements. I have to establish radio communication, what they call two-way radio communication. I call them, they reply back to me before I can enter Class Delta. Very easy. I don't get a clearance, but I talk to them, they reply back to me. They can tell me to stay out, by the way. If they tell me to stay out, that means, well, I received AT instruction to stay out. Unless I have an emergency, I cannot go in now. But as long as I talk to them, I don't need them to tell me I'm cleared to enter. I am cleared to enter as soon as I talk to them, unless they tell me to stay out. Okay? ATC services, what do I have? IFR, and workload permitting for VFR pilots. Okay. Class Charlie, look at Fort Lauderdale International. So just above Miami, just below Fort Lauderdale Executive. It's a solid magenta line. That's Class Charlie airspace. Look at this. Minimum visibility, 3 statute miles. 5 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal. Kind of standard stuff. Pilot qualifications. Who can go in there? Student pilot or above. What are my entry requirements? Just one more thing other than talking to them. I have to have a mode B, or correction, a mode C, and now a mode S transponder in 2020, okay? So I have to have that transponder on, yes. ADS-B. So I'm broadcasting, I know, I love the way they do this. We talk about something and then we describe it. But ADSB means it broadcasts your registration and your position out to all other frequencies, okay? Look at what's happening in ATC services in Class Charlie. IFR to VFR, or correction, IFR to IFR, IFR to VFR, that is guaranteed. So if there's an IFR pilot, they will also have clearance from VFR pilots, okay? And VFR traffic advisories, workload permitting only. So what do they owe to the VFR guy? Nothing. What do they owe to the IFR pilot? Well, IFR clearance to other IFR traffic, and then clearance for that traffic in any VFR collision avoidance. So if I'm on an IFR flight plan and there's a VFR airplane and I can't find it, they tell me where it is and I can't find it, they will move my airplane. They'll tell me to fly a different direction, okay? So getting a little bit better as far as ATC services. Nothing for us though, VFR pilots. Bravo. Big, busy Boeing, right? Bravo, B. Minimum visibility, 3. But just stay out of the cloud. I don't have to stay far away from the cloud, just stay out of it. Minimum pilot qualification, private pilot. Or student pilot with a logbook endorsement. I have never in my life seen a student pilot with a Class Bravo logbook endorsement. Okay, if someone asked me to do it, I would say, what in the F do you need that for? Probably no, okay? All right, so, private pilot. VFR entry, I need an ATC clearance. This is the very first time that I need a clearance, is to get into Class Bravo airspace. Just talking to them does not satisfy my entry requirements. I have to have a clearance. And I need to have a Mode C transponder, of course. Why? Well, because 30 miles around this monster, I have to have a Mode C transponder, or Mode S now. ATC services, guess what they're doing? Services to everybody. So if you're inside there, you now will have the controller's full attention. Okay? Good or bad, you have their full attention, okay? That's why it requires a clearance for you to enter. All right, fantastic. Sometimes the congested areas such as San Diego, I think, has one. You got San Diego, San Francisco, and LA. Los Angeles has one where they will allow VFR traffic to pass through a Class Bravo airspace. And it is a VFR corridor. You do not need a clearance, but you must remain in the confines of that VFR corridor. And there's a speed limit of 200 knots, okay? It's airspace with specific vertical and lateral limits. You can see them right here. And prior to entering the class airspace, I get a VFR transition route, obtain a clearance, and then fly the route as depicted by ATC. Fly along the VFR flyway in the vicinity without entering the airspace or obtaining a clearance. So I'm not entering the Class Bravo airspace at this point, not one bit at all. I'm just going through the flyway. All right. Class Alpha airspace. Well, this one's kind of easy. Starts at flight level 180, goes up to flight level 600. Right there. Okay. Guess what? Minimum visibility for VFR? No. Because there's no VFR. IFR only. VFR minimum? Nope. Minimum pilot qualifications? Instrument rating. There's no VFR. So you have to have an instrument rating to get up there. VFR entry and requirement entrance. IFR flight plan, IFR clearance. You have to be IFR to fly in this thing. Okay? ATC services, guess what? They are 100%. Anyone that's there, there's no VFR traffic, anyone that's there will have sufficient clearance. Whether you're looking outside the window or not, right? Although it's still my obligation as a pilot to do this. But ATC will keep you separated from any other airplane that's up there. Okay. Ta-da! This is how, and if you look at Miami, you can see we've got some areas, right, where Class Bravo airspace begins and where it ends. Miami is interesting because the top of it is only 7,000 feet. But the bottom of these areas are shelves where it goes down to whatever altitude is listed in that shelf. So I can fly under Class Bravo airspace. I have a speed limit under Class Bravo airspace, and the speed limit's 200. I can't go any faster than 200 below Class Bravo. So here, the cloud ceiling is below 1,000 feet AGL, the visibility is below 3. You cannot obtain a special VFR clearance because Dallas-Fort Worth, in this example, does not allow special VFR. Sometimes I want to fly into or out of airports if I have lower than the minimum flight visibility. What was the flight visibility for Class Bravo? 3 statute miles. What is it for Charlie and Delta? 3 statute miles. So if I had a day where I only have 1 statute mile visibility, maybe I want to fly. And I want to fly VFR. Maybe I don't have an instrument rating. I want to fly VFR. I can do that. I can request special VFR clearance. ATC can issue that special VFR clearance. If it shows no special VFR, look at Miami. Do we have any no special VFR listed by Miami? It should have it right there in the airport data block. Miami International, right there. See where it says no special VFR? Yeah, a bunch of them have it. Miami International, no special VFR. You guys find it? You guys find it? Right there. You see it? So that means don't even call that controller and request special VFR because they are going to deny it. But Fort Lauderdale Executive, they don't have anything that says no special VFR. If it's raining pretty hard, which sometimes it is, but it's very calm conditions, so I don't have any weather hazards. I just have a reduction on visibility. Sometimes I'll request special VFR from Fort Lauderdale Executive. And I'll leave Fort Lauderdale Executive with only 1 or maybe 1.5 mile visibility. That's easy. That's something I can do. You cannot do it at airports where it's listed. Don't do it. I think Fort Lauderdale International has it as well. Miami has it, I know. Okay? No special VFR. All right, special use airspace. Some of the airspace is either temporary in nature, like a TFR, or we have restricted, prohibited, warning areas, military operation areas. All of these are listed on the inside right here, on the inside next to where the control tower times were. That shows me effective times, dates when I could expect it, altitudes, so forth, so on. This is an alert area. We have alert areas that let us know concentrated practice. You've got plenty of alert areas right here in the South Florida area. Alert area, concentrated flight training. Definitely doesn't mean that I can't fly there. It just means stay on the lookout and remain vigilant. Bunch of student pilots trying to fly airplanes. Okay. Taking a look at that margin, again, it tells me altitudes. If I want to dig into these things, I can do it on that margin. Here, the lateral dimensions of the warning area off the coast of Florida are shown by a blue hatched line. You can see all across the coast, we've got a warning area. We've got plenty of warning areas. These warning areas contain aircraft that are in excess of 250 knots, below 10,000 feet. They're intercept airplanes. Okay? Special use airspace, prohibited, restricted, alert, warning, military operations area. The prohibited area means just that. Can't fly in it. I got those over submarine docks or bases, wherever they are. I think there's one in North Florida. We've got them over the Washington, D.C. area. Just can't fly over it. Restricted area, I could fly through that. There's probably not any reason why I wouldn't. They tell me I should contact the controlling agency, which is true. But the reason I should contact that controlling agency is because it contains some sort of hazard to non-participating pilots. That balloon down there near Key West, that's a restricted area. Well, because it's restricted so we don't kill ourselves flying into the thing. Other restricted areas might contain missile firing or guided missile fire or gunnery or artillery fire. Lots of different things that exist there. Hazards to pilots, okay? Military operation area, I can fly there all I want. But there may be a really fast airplane somewhere in there, and if they crash into me, they have a parachute and I don't. There's nothing saying that I can't fly into a military operations area. Military operations area were designed to separate IFR traffic from certain military activities. Okay? Now they could be active or non-active. I look into my margin there and I find out what are the hours of operation, and I can contact the controlling agency and find out for sure what the deal is on that particular special use airspace. All right? Okay, showing on New York, you got a prohibited, there it is, a little prohibited area, right there. We don't have any on our chart. A warning from, what do we got here? Should avoid flight below 3,000 and the NSA depicted here on that magenta. Oh, national security airspace. So some sort of national security airspace. We don't have any in South Florida. Local airport advisory service is available here. Alaska is only available. I don't even understand what they got there going on there. Local advisory service. If the airport that I'm flying to has a flight service station, again, look at Tamiami, Miami Executive. You can see that block around the data block, how it's dark. Remember those other data blocks that we're looking at? Go to Miami Executive. Dark, solid, and it says Miami right there. That means it's a flight service station. And I have local airport advisories. Okay? Military training routes. Visual, instrument training routes. These exist. What kind of activities do I find in military training routes? Excess of 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Does that mean I'm not going to cross any of them? We cross them all the time. Okay? But they're charted, so I should exercise vigilance as I cross them. Okay, whatever. All right, parachute symbol. We already talked about parachutes, parachute activity. Solid gray line. Something you're not going to see very often is a terminal radar service area, the TERSA. There are some of these. They still exist. This one's in Muskegon County. I have one in Mobile, Alabama, if you want to take a look at these. All it is something that's similar to Class Charlie airspace, but it doesn't meet the stringent criteria of Class Charlie airspace. They have a very good radar system, but they don't have everything else they need to be Class Charlie. So it's listed as a TERSA. Several years ago, like many years ago in the 90s, you either had an ARSA, a TERSA, a positive control airspace, terminal control airspace. So this is before they started designating them as Class Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta airspace. Okay? Reasons why I would have a temporary flight restriction are under this rule 91.137 or 91.138. I have disasters, emergency air traffic rules, or VIP. So when it shows up, and guess what? Nobody's going to fly anywhere near it. And within 30 nautical miles of it, there are some restrictions. I have to be in contact with ATC, and I have to have a designated code. All right? Some of the other ones for 91-143, space operations, air shows, and special security, like the ballpark or the arena. This particular TFR consists of 2 nautical mile inner rings, which restrict complete control. No one is flying in here unless it says United or American Airlines. They won't disrupt that. Couple of reasons. The pilots are hired and they have security clearance. Well, they have a background check on each one of those pilots. And everyone aboard that airplane went through TSA. So scheduled air carriers, they can continue to fly in and out. But if you're not scheduled or if you're a general aviation airplane, you cannot fly into that 10 nautical mile ring all the way up to 18,000 feet. Okay? This area, typically, you can fly through it, but you need to fly a direct line and you have to contact ATC, have a code in your transponder, and maintain contact with ATC all through your route. So it's a flight restriction. It doesn't say I can't fly through there at all completely. These pop up regularly in Palm Beach, in Miami, all the time. Stadiums. We talked to stadium. There's a stadium, and of course 3,000 feet can't fly in that area within 3 nautical mile radius. Temporary flight restrictions. How do I find that information? Well, 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF, right? 800-WX-BRIEF. That's a great way of doing it. Or I can go to the FDC NOTAM site, notam.faa.gov. Right? Whose responsibility is? Obviously, pilot command. All right, the ADIZ. You guys see the ADIZ, don't you? Air Defense Intercept Zone, all across the outside borders. There is a zone from the coastline or somewhere near the coastline all the way out to an area designated as an Air Defense Intercept Zone. That's where the intercept process begins if some sort of a projectile is observed by radar as a threat. A projectile that's observed by radar and considered a threat is an airplane without a discrete without a discrete code and in contact with ATC. If you attempt to cross into the ADIZ coming into the United States without a specific code, VFR or IFR, you could be either one, but you have to have that code in the transponder. If you attempt to enter without that code, the intercept will occur. Okay? Talking about a couple of special flight rules. This is the Washington, D.C. area. A lot of this is prohibited. It has special flight rules for it, even for the air carriers. And the air carriers have to fly a specified route on the way in. Okay? That's around D.C. Requirement with VFR, flight within 60 nautical miles of the Washington, D.C. VOR. Well, I got to file that flight plan, obtain what's called a discrete transponder code. ATC assigns me squawk code 4233. Well, it means in my little transponder, I put that code, and now they're tracking me exactly wherever I go. Okay? Contact ATC and comply with a speed restriction of 180 knots. That's how I fly around Washington, D.C. within 60 nautical miles. Okay? There is a website you can obtain special awareness training if you want to go over there and see how exactly I could fly in Washington, D.C. If you're interested in that, well, of course, I could go do that. Right? Okay, intercept. How does that occur? Identification, intercept, and then instructions to comply. They always show up in at least 2 or more, in a flight of at least 2 or more. During the identification phase, they will identify your airplane and the registration, okay? And that will occur at a speed that's a lot faster than you're flying at. For one of these airplanes to fly 120 knots or less is nearly impossible. So they're gonna come across at 350, 450, 500 knots is very fast, okay? And the optics that they have on board the airplane allow them to capture all that information and just keep on moving by, The fun part about that is as one passes and then makes a turn in front of you, the other one is really close, and then they also do the exact same thing. Okay? So it's like a constant barrage of a fast-flying jet right in front of your flight path. If the intercepting aircraft performs a slow level turn, you match the heading and follow. So if they make a nice slow level turn in one direction, this is the intercept phase. You follow that airplane. Okay? If you do not follow the instructions, the intercepting aircraft might turn abruptly across the flight path and dispense flares. You immediately follow that airplane. This means they're in the intercept phase. The intercept phase did not work sufficiently, and now they're going to cross your flight path. What do the airplanes have on the back sides of every one of the wings? Wingtip vortices. They also have jet blasts. It gets a little bit exciting inside the airplane, okay? You might turn upside down by mistake, all right? Or part of the airplane falls off. But that's just your fault for flying into the wake turbulence of this airplane, okay? So if you see a nice, slow, gentle turn, that means follow that airplane and then land, all right? Okay, a couple of intercepting aircraft signals. They approach from behind, flies to the left, match speed and heading. They can't do that in an intercept airplane like a government airplane. Maybe in a helicopter. Sometimes they'll use Coast Guard helicopters to do this as well. Well, that means perform a slow level turn, approach from behind means you've been intercepted. And then you should rock your wings to acknowledge. And if it's nighttime, you flash your navigation lights. If they perform a slow level turn, that means follow me, fly this way. Match the heading and follow. If it turns abruptly across your flight path and dispenses flare, that means warning. Turn in the direction of that aircraft immediately. Immediately follow the aircraft. If it circles the airport, lowers the landing gear, and overflies the runway, that's where they want you to land. Okay. They cannot talk to us on those frequencies. They have US or UHF and encrypted communications. There's no way you're going to talk to that pilot. Land on the runway, or if you cannot land safely, overfly, blah, blah, blah. Okay. If the pilot breaks away by performing a 90-degree turn without crossing your flight path, then they understand your intentions, and you're free to go. And then you just rock your wings, acknowledge, and proceed on course. Okay? So those are intercept procedures. Now, ta-da! Does that look busy?
Did you memorize it that hard?
You don't already have it memorized? Yes, you should memorize that entire thing by heart. It's not complicated, but you don't want to be up here without knowing where you belong and where you don't belong.
We should do it tonight to pass the exam, right?
Well, there might be some questions on it, yeah. This is another great one. Rolls everything up together. So if you guys want to take a photo of that, by all means, take a photo of that. Okie doke. Well, we got to churn through just one more little bit here, ground lesson 5, and honestly, we're spending a lot of time on some of this stuff. However, what I can tell you about lesson 4 is that a lot of the information that we talked about translates over. Now, I need to go through and find the exceptions and give you just a brief, hey, here's ground lesson 5 and what we need to know that'll help us be successful on ground lesson 5. But with us spending time on these charts, discussing the rules and discussing the airspace and looking at the charts and finding out the air data information that I get off the airports, I've covered a lot of chapter 5 during the chapter 4 discussion. So we will cover a little bit here, just a couple minutes of this, but certainly take a small break. I'm going to go outside and use the restroom real quick, maybe grab some water, and let's come in and work through the rest of this chapter 5. Any questions on that previous one? Oh, certainly so. I'll leave it right on there. That one? Yeah, that one's pretty good. Okay. The next chapter will tell me all about transponders and Mode C transponders and Mode S transponders. We've already talked about a little bit of this stuff, haven't we? We've already talked about a good bit of Mode C and Mode S transponders. Not like I haven't already mentioned it within 2,500 feet of any terrain feature, right? The ground or any kind of mountainous terrain or anything else. And at and above 10,000 feet MSL, I have to have my Mode C transponder on. And that, of course, that changed recently and became Mode S transponder. This is the chapter where we figure out what a Mode S transponder is. So, who's familiar with ADS-B? And what that means for us? No? Okay.
What we see in flight radar.
In what? It doesn't have to only be radar. So, flightradar.com? Are you talking about Flight Aware? Or, I don't know. Yeah? Ah, cool. All right, I like that. So, yes, that's correct. That information is broadcasted by all the airplanes now. Every airplane that we have that's flying in those areas, above 2,500 feet, above 10,000 feet, and anywhere above Class Charlie and inside that Mode C veil for Class Bravo airspace. What it does is it sends out a precise location of my airplane with WAAS augmentation. So not only a GPS position, but also ground-based facilities that have a very, very accurate location of where my airplane is and the trajectory that it's flying along. And it sends out the registration. So whatever was written on the side of my airplane, November 737 Bravo Alpha, that information is transmitted and received by air traffic control. Other airplanes that have an ADS-B in capability, that have those kind of receivers, and all of the government agencies. All right? So that's Mode S. Now, a couple of things that I know about Mode S. Let's see here. I go. I go to ATC services. And here are my key terms. ADS-B. So automatic dependent surveillance broadcast. The information that's sent out is just a very precise location of my airplane and who it belongs to. Just like having a license plate on a car now, that's exactly what is sent out by every airplane that's operating in those areas. Radar, simple stuff. Radar sends out a signal. It bounces off of an object and returns to the sender. Radar is used to get a primary location of any airplane, whether it has ADS-B or not, and any kind of trajectory that occurs there. Secondary surveillance radar, air traffic radar control beacon system, transponder, squawk. These are key terms that I'll certainly use. My transponder just sends out the message that says, I'm here. And the squawk code is the exact code that I'll have on that transponder to let ATC know I'm complying with their instructions. And then that used to be the only way that they would track us. Now they also track us through ADS-B that says this is the registration on the airplane in case that pilot doesn't want to cooperate. Okay. Flight Service Search and Rescue Control Tower, ATIS, clearance delivery, all this, terminal radar control, TRACON, and Air Route Traffic Control Center. These are the different layers of radar control that we have in the U.S. TRACON is typically pretty close to the airport environment. Miami, Fort Lauderdale International, anywhere around Miami or Orlando or Tampa, they have their own TRACON. Center would be Miami Center all the way up until I reach Jacksonville. and then Jacksonville center on. These are areas that are above 10,000 feet. If I'm working above 10,000 feet, I'm on with center. Okay. Traffic advisory, safety alert, vectors, sequencing, and separation. Okay. So there it is, global position sensing, right? With the ground stations. Like I said, it provides a very accurate position. And then it transmits out. Line of sight to air traffic control, other airplanes. That's your one snapshot summary of ADS-B. ADS-B sends out information to this guy that's sitting courtesy of the FAA, trying to find out who's doing what. All right, that makes sense. And also, right here, to other flight decks. This is the future of the U.S. aviation system. And when there are fewer of them, there will be a much better streamlined system out there. Okay, but right now, not all pilots are capable of doing this. So we still have some assistance by ATC. The information that I receive with an ADS-B in. Okay, so what kind of information can I receive on my flight deck? I mentioned to you guys, some of our airplanes have this. The Duchess, the multi-engine, it has it. The TechNam that we have, it has it. The Cirrus that we have, it has ADS-B in. So not only are we broadcasting position, but we can also receive information. I get traffic data. Where is the other traffic? And now this includes all of the traffic. If I'm above 2,500 feet, guaranteed, everybody up there has Mode S. Okay? I also get aircraft surface movement. Where are the other airplanes on the ground? Okay? So while they're squawking and moving on the ground, I can track their position, and so can the TRACON controller. They can track position on the ground. And I can get flight information service broadcast, which is weather, TFR locations, special use airspace status. A lot of that information now that used to be filtered through the flight service station and through the air traffic controllers is available to me on my flight deck right there at my display. Okay, what kind of ADS-B receiver do I need? Well, above 18,000 feet, I need that kind, a 1090 ES, or both. There's not a question in the world on whether I need a 978 or a 1090 ES. This is just kind of nice to know information for ADS-B. If I'm filing a flight plan, now we have flight plans with only ICAO. We no longer use the FAA domestic flight plan form. So filing my flight plan, I have to know which kind of Mode S transponder I have. How do I find out that information? Look in the airplane flight manual, Section 9 under supplements. And it'll show me exactly what I have on that airplane. Okay? How radar works, kind of in a snapshot, and the colors up here are terrible, but you got the emitted wave coming out of the radar, and it bounces off that airplane. Whether it has a transponder or not, it bounces off that airplane and gives them a primary indication. Lets them know, hey, there's something in the air. Does it have a transponder? Yes or no? If it doesn't have a transponder, well, then they forward it to TRACON to figure out, is this a threat, and the Department of Defense takes it. Okay? But that's just radar in a nutshell. We'll talk a little bit more about radar in the weather chapter. Okay, transponder. This is called a discrete code. I don't know where they came up with that term, discrete code. Discrete just means it's mine. It's all mine. This code belongs to that airplane. Okay? And there are some other codes that you use for common stuff. VFR, emergency, lost comms. We're going to get into those in a moment. But secondary surveillance radar means that I've got radar. Primary comes out and hits the airplane and comes back, just like so. Primary return. And then that secondary return comes from the transponder. The transponder sends out all of the information. So radar can pick up, this guy sitting on his screen can detect that there's an airplane in the air. And then that other part of the radar return is all of my information. It pops up with, this is the registration, this is the airspeed, this is the location, this is the altitude. Okay? All that information is sent from my airplane. Gets real quick into capabilities of radar and some limitations. Depending on how the temperature is, It could bend the radar. That's why primary radar was useful, but it was not very accurate. So this was the limitation that kind of led the industry to go to this Mode S system. Because now Mode S says, okay, you don't know exactly where I am because that primary system was giving you some bad information that will definitely tell you this is what's happening with that airplane. So that's that secondary. It could be reflected from clouds or whatever. It could be screened if I'm behind a mountain. Okay. Still, that secondary system is going to send the information. Couple of things that I do with my transponder, whether I'm using a normal transponder or a glass panel, but the normal transponder here, I got VFR, which sets it to 1200. I got ident, which causes my airplane on the radar screen to get really bright on their screen, just so they could find me. Normally that's on the ATC request. They'll say, November 4-1 Mike Echo, ident. You push the ident button and their screen gets bright right there where you are. Now they can find you quickly, okay? You can set numbers 0 through 7 to any one of a possible 4,096 different codes. This is how they get the term 4096 transponder. During some of the practice exams, you'll see, let's say 4096 transponder. That means there's 4,096 different codes available. And all of the different transponder functions, standby, on, altitude, off, or ground. I can tell you, just leave the transponder on altitude and never, ever, ever mess with it. There's no reason to mess with it, okay? You can turn it off if you'd like, but that's confusing to the next pilot because now they got to turn it on altitude, right? Just leave it on all the time. There are different functions. There was at one point in time a reason for them to have different functions, but now we can just leave it on altitude all the time. Okay, couple of different codes. 1200 VFR. That, something assigned by ATC. There's one of 4,096 different ATC codes that I can have. 7,500 means I'm hijacked. Okay. In a Cessna, that's a bad thing. Okay? Anything is a bad thing. All right, communication failure. I can't talk to them. Exactly what we were talking about earlier. You said, what happens if the radio fails? 7,600. And at least I'm communicating to let them know I can't talk to them on the radio. And 7,700 is your emergency. Transponder phraseology. How does ATC communicate their requests or their instructions to me? If they say squawk and then give me a number like squawk 3256, that means I'm supposed to squawk that. Now, where did this squawk thing come from? Apparently, way back a long time ago, when they very first started using transponders, the name of the company that had the radio setup was Parrot. And then they ended up saying squawk this such and such code. So that's a little bit of maybe trivia. I don't even know that it's true. I heard that kind of second, third hand. But squawk just means push this code in your transponder. Ident means push the ident button. Squawk VFR, set to 1200. Easy stuff, right? Stop altitude squawk or squawk standby. I can tell you, you will never, never, never hear that, okay? So just, you guys know how I feel about always and never? Well, these two, they won't do it. Stop squawk, again, you're not gonna get that one either. Squawk mayday, set your code to 7700. If you got a mayday, well, set it to 7700. Okay. Before you taxi from parking, they say put this thing on standby. No reason to do that. Especially now because we can track airplanes on the ground. Just leave it on altitude all the time. ATC years ago, ATC would request at certain airports for us to turn this on ground mode or on standby because it would confuse airplanes as they approach the field. I might be on short final and I get a traffic advisory from an airplane that's taxiing down the runway to take off, okay? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I get a traffic advisory, you look down there, oh, guess what? It's the airplane on the ground. Okay. When you're airborne, altitude, of course, and after landing, clear the runway, it says there, altitude. Okay. How often do these things need to be checked? Transponder? Once every 24 calendar months. That's correct. I find that in the aircraft logbook. Okay, it gets into real quick on filing flight plans. You should file a flight. If I'm flying IFR, I have to file flight plans. If I'm flying VFR, I should file a flight plan. A lot of people don't because it's a little bit of a nuisance. Plus, almost all of us have cell phones and we can call somebody. But remember that one student a couple years ago was gone for 3 days. If they had filed a flight plan before they left, search and rescue would have found them before the alligator did. How many times does that happen? Almost never. Okay? But it is a function that's available to us, as a service that's available to us. Now, doing this, I can, with my phone, go on a flight service station while I'm getting my weather brief, file for a flight plan, and then activate that flight plan online. I can also activate it flight service station using any of their frequencies. Okay? So kind of a natural sequence of events if I'm going to take a flight, especially a cross-country flight, use 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF or 1-800-WEATHERBRIEF.com. Weather briefing, NOTAMs, file your flight plan. Activate the flight plan using the flight service station frequency or the Easy Activate email link. That provides me with updated weather, assistance in lost or emergency situations. We as pilots provide flight service station with pilot reports or any report of an ADS-B malfunction. And then once you land, close the flight plan. Okay? If you land and you do not close your flight plan, search and rescue will come look for you. They 100% will do that. I'll tell you exactly how the search and rescue starts. In your flight plan, you're required to list an emergency contact. They are going to call that emergency contact. If it's the school, if it's the flight instructor, if it's you, that's who they're going to call first. They may also, if it's a controlled tower, if it's a towered field, they might call that tower and say, hey, did you ever see this airplane land? Yeah, we just landed them. Oh, okay, right, they're going to close it. But they will start at least looking for you. If they call the airfield, you haven't showed up, they call your emergency contact, no one answers, or that person says, I don't know where this person is, these people are going to come find you. Okay? Okay. Scratch pad on the iPad. This is for flight and how I get down all my ATIS information. When you're listening to ATIS on liveatc.net, 100%, write it down. Practice writing this stuff down. Airport code information, time, wind, the sky condition, all this. Okay, so practice writing this stuff down. You're going to write this stuff down all the time. The natural sequence of me leaving an airport, listen to ATIS, contact the ground controller, listen to ATIS. Some airports, and Fort Lauderdale is one of these airports now, contact clearance delivery and get instructions to include a transponder code. Well, if you're flying VFR without flight following, your transponder code is 1200. All they're going to tell you to do is to contact ground. Okay, fine. So contact ground to taxi in the movement area. Is the ramp considered a movement area? No. I taxi all the way out that ramp, right? But before I get to the movement area, contact ground, I get my taxi instructions. Tower controller will provide me traffic advisories. And then along my way, I kind of start this natural sequence again. Listen to ATIS at my arriving airport. Tower controller, direct me to a traffic pattern, clears me to land, and then go to ground to taxi to the ramp. Okay? I know it sounds really easy. It's because it 100% is. And the first few times you do it, it won't feel like it's easy, but in just a little while, this is very, very, very easy to adapt to. Okay, receive TRACON services. I can request flight following. I can have that ATC follow my airplane all along the way. They monitor surface movement, traffic advisory, safety alerts, vectoring, separation a little bit, okay. Not really too much separation unless I'm in class Bravo. They provide VFR flight following and assistance if I become lost or disoriented. And then sequencing and a handoff to the tower controller. When I get to where I'm going, they'll let me know, here's your tower controller. Contact them on 118.3, whatever the frequency is for tower. Right? Now, if ATC issues a traffic alert, remember we were talking that my ground track across the ground, my flight path across the ground might be affected by wind. So if I have wind moving in this direction, I might point there, but I'm actually traveling across the ground like this. Remember the ATC, that controller that's at the radar screen, the only thing they see is your track across the ground. So when they're looking at your track, they will tell you where the traffic is in relationship to that ground track. In this case, I have a ground track straightforward and I got traffic at 11 o'clock. But if I have a wind correction angle, I might need to look further to the left. You can see your wind right there so that I can interpret what ATC is attempting to tell me. It's one of the limitations. Okay, section B, radio procedures. And let's see here, we're going to get into this guy. A couple key terms, very high frequency, okay, line of sight, phonetic alphabet. Does anybody not know the phonetic alphabet yet? Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. Okay, make sure you know that. Make sure, and my Spanish crowd is usually the worst about this. Make sure that when you're trying to communicate your N number or your registration to ATC, make sure it's legible and it is deliberate. Don't say it so fast. Okay? That's not the time to say 737 Lima. What the world are you saying? No, I'm 737 Bravo Alpha. Okay. So make sure you take some time to say each one of those. Remember, this person has no idea what your airplane registration is. They're writing this down, okay? Universal Coordinated Time, Zulu Time, fine, CTAF. We talked about CTAF. Unicom multi-time, self-announced procedure. Like I said, we went through a whole lot of this chapter in the previous one. It just fit together. Air traffic control clearance, what does that mean? Well, if they clear me to enter a Class Bravo airspace, now I can operate my airplane there. Progressive taxi, I said, if you get to a point where you're confused on where you're going in the taxiway, what could I do? Ask them to help you. Everybody's going to be mad at you, but it's okay. Let them be mad. Don't go somewhere you're not supposed to go, right? Don't cause a runway incursion. Ask them which way to go. So a progressive taxi is a real thing, but that might make me think why everybody's mad. Yeah, it's a little bit knuckleheaded. Maybe I need to figure out and study that airport before I get out there and try to move my airplane around. Radar contact, approach control, lost communication procedures, distress, urgency, 5 Cs. These are your lost communication procedures, okay? You climb, you communicate, you call somebody and let them know, hey, I think this is what's going on. You confess and tell them, yeah, I'm 100%, I'm lost. Comply with their instruction and then conserve. Lean the mixture, reduce your power setting, right? Don't burn through all your fuel. And an emergency location transmitter. We were talking yesterday, if I exceed the G-force of the ELT, like crash, then it'll send out a message, a signal on 121.5. And that'll help search and rescue find me. Okay, so lost comms procedures. Here I go, ground. Ground and in the air. Steady green, cleared to land, cleared for takeoff. That's my steadies, steady greens. Flashing green, return for landing, or cleared for taxi if I'm on the ground. Steady red, give way and continue circling. And steady red on the ground is stop. Steady red in the air, do not land. Go somewhere else, or correction, flashing red in the air means do not land. Go somewhere else. If it's a flashing red, just go somewhere else. Flashing red, I'm on the ground, that means I can taxi, but don't taxi onto the runway. Flashing white, go back to where you came from. And you won't get that if you're in the air. They won't tell you to go back to where you came from. They just tell you, go somewhere else. If it's red and green, exercise extreme caution. Stuff that I need to know. And if I have a radio failure, that's how I communicate. That's my primary means of communication. Okay? Yes?
One question, how we can understand that this light is for us and for someone else?
What is this like?
That was awesome. So, number one, where's air traffic control? In the tower. So look to the tower.
Yes.
And number two
And number two,
is, how do I know that I'm the only one getting these instructions? Great question. I've never had that question. But how likely would it be that I would get struck by lightning twice in the same day? Not very likely, right? About the same. It's not likely that there's two people experiencing the exact same problem, lost communication. You're right, though. It could happen. And if it does, I don't know. We're going to have to figure that out.
no. I'm flying. Somebody's flying right behind me.
Hmm?
And we both see the signal. How do I know?
There's only one of you that doesn't have a radio working. There's only one that doesn't have a radio working.
So if your radio is on and you can...
If you can hear and you can talk to them, it's not for you. It's not for you. This is only for lost comms. That's the only reason they'll use that.
Should I answer somehow to...
You can't. You could rock your wings, okay, yeah, that. But what are you going to do? The only way you can answer is by complying with what they say. Steady green, I'm going to land. And they are very, very bright lights. You will know that's for you. Okay. Earlier we were talking about sectional charts. I said that there's magnetic variation. You have an isogonic line. All right, that's fine. With those isogonic lines that help me change true direction to magnetic direction, which I need a magnetic compass. So in order to use that magnetic compass and navigate somewhere, I had to make a conversion. We will work this out on the navigation chapter. And the navigation chapter is Tuesday. That Tuesday is the day that we're slotted to do that. But this just gives me an idea of how the variations occur as I go down. Look down here in Florida. We're pretty close to zero. What did it show? 5 degrees, 6 degrees, 7 degrees. Okay. All the way over here, big difference. 20 degrees east. Big difference in Maine, 20 degrees west. Okay. If I want to convert from UTC to any of these time zones, Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific, well, I just apply the following adjustments. We still participate in daylight savings time. I don't know why. Do you guys do daylight savings time here?
No.
Okay. Several years. Okay, good. Yeah, we're supposed to stop, I hope, soon. But yeah, they still do it. Okay. So to convert from this, you do that. Okay. All right. Miami radio. We talked about that one already, right? The 22.1R. This is just a review at this point. That's all that is. This is how I contact Miami radio. What type of information do I get from Miami radio? Weather. Updated weather, right? I can also open my flight plan that I just learned about a few moments ago. I can cancel my flight plan, okay? I could truly file my flight plan using this, but you're using a radio frequency for a lot of transmissions, And that is not nice for everybody else that's trying to do something, right? And people still use this quite a bit. ELT, emergency location transmitter, all right? It broadcasts on 121.5. 121.5 is called guard. So you don't transmit on it unless you're in an emergency. This will transmit on your behalf if you activate it by a crash, okay? Hard landing will not activate one of these. I know, because I've seen some hard landings. I've seen people break airplanes on landings. No ELT. Okay. All right, sources of flight information. Hey, we're clicking through this thing. Oh, that's pretty good. You guys like, woohoo! All right, key terms. Airport facility directory. That used to be a real thing. Now it's called chart supplement, and I always call it the ugly green book. Electronic flight bag. That's your iPad. And that's a very, very useful tool. Most examiners are still, and most instructors are still going to want you to show up with paper charts. Okay? Notice to airmen, a NOTAM. Distant NOTAMs, as in runway closures. I want to know if the runway is closed before I take off, because what good does it do for me to fly there if the runway is closed? Or what good does it do for me to land there if they're going to close it while I'm out eating dinner? That actually happened once. FDC NOTAM, which is a Flight Data Center NOTAM, this is regulatory in nature. Something about the rules have changed. And it's either temporary or it happened since the previous publication. So something about the rules have changed. Inside that chart supplement contains all the information about airports and so forth. Okay, fine, fantastic. And yesterday, I spoke about advisory circulars. Today, I gave you one advisory circular, 90-66 Bravo, correct? That's the one I gave you guys? Okay. These are some of the common advisory circular prefixes. So 60 is for airmen. Anything that starts with 60, that's usually for airmen. 70 for airspace. 90, like the one for non-towered airports, 90-66 Bravo. This is ATC and general operating procedures.